And it's Friday afternoon, just in case you didn't realise that. I did have to ask someone midweek what day it was because I totally thought it was Thursday, but it was only Tuesday. And thank God it's Friday, not that it really matters right now. And on this beautiful Friday, I have joining me a wonderful human being that I know, the beautiful Hayley Wilson from Love Yourself Healthy. And she is totally committed to serving particularly women in the fitness mindset and nutrition space. Hayley, thank you for joining me.
That's okay, Annette. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's okay. Otherwise, I'd be talking to myself.
That can be entertaining at times, though.
But maybe I could do a whole 30 minutes where I interview myself. That would be, quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Now, you have got a really interesting story about how you've woven something that I find totally fascinating that I think that not many people would know about, and it's epigenetics. And it sounds a little bit weird and a little bit like, oh, hang on, like, are we making people in petri dishes? Well, it could be. I remember when you first told me, and I was like, oh, it's like she going to manipulate my DNA or something. Tell me what that is and how it impacts our anatomy.
Yeah. So the easiest way that I find to describe epigenetics versus genetics is like, so say with Facebook and social media, we have a profile picture, so it's a still image. Or if there's a new movie coming out or something, there's like a promotional billboard or just a still image of that. So that would be how we would sort of think of genetics. So if you were to take a blood test and get your DNA sample done and it prints out this piece of paper and it says black and white, this is your genetics, this is who you are. That's just like this screenshot, just this like, bam, just your profile picture. It's a picture of who you are. Epigenetics, however, is like the personal interaction. It's the movement, it's the breath, it's the emotion, it's the inhalation and exhalation, it's the resonance of voice, it's the tone, it's the way your body shapes itself. So compared to the billboard of the movie, epigenetics is the whole motion action picture. It's the prequel and it's the sequel. And if you could imagine that in 5D where you could smell everything and you could feel the breeze and experience all the emotions, that's the difference between genetics and epigenetics. So when we're looking at your physical form for your epigenetics, every single way that your body is expressing itself through shape and size and through coloration and voice and even, the way your hair grows and all the rest of it, the way your bones are shaping themselves, your lovely hair, that's all your epigenetics. So even if you get a headache, that's an expression of your genetics. That's your epigenetics. So I work in that space. So the story of you instead of just the printout.
Wow. Yeah. I love how you just explained that. It just made so much sense to me. So how does that influence how we show up? Like what type of things manifest out of that?
Everything. Absolutely every way that you show up in life is representative of your epigenetics. So we have there's this beautiful story of these two twins in the States. They're identical twins, right? So they were conceived at the same time in the same womb. So the two same cells came together to create these two individuals. But then throughout life, one twin just thrived in every way possible. She, never struggled with weight or with health. Her health was always great. That was awesome. She always struggled. She always did really well at school. She was always really sociable. Everything sort of fit her needs really well, and she thrived and had this great life. The other twin, however, struggled with everything. Her health was always a challenge. She always carried more weight. She wasn't as sociable. She couldn't make friends as well. She really struggled in class, and she couldn't keep up with her sister in their sports and things. But they were both raised in the same household, fed from the same groceries, treated exactly the same, like it was sort of those 80 twins where they're dressed identical and treated identical in everything that they did. So if we look at that from a genetic perspective, the printout paper, they should have had the exact same result at the end of the day because they had the exact same ingredients in everything they did. When we're looking at the epigenetics, it's the way the energy transfers between the different cells when the embryos are formed that then change how your life is going to function from then going forward. So for the sister who was thriving, obviously the environment that she landed in was perfect for her. Everything worked really well. And for the other sister, it was sort of blame was placed on her for not being this perfect ideal situation where she was in, but she just needed some different things. So her chronobiology was probably different. She probably needed to sleep in a little bit later in the morning and not get up so early. And she probably needed to maybe eat more veggies early in the day than later in the day, or things like that. Like simple little differences started to express themselves through her body. And we as individuals are the same. So we see two sisters who are trying to follow the exact same healthy living. And I look at this from a holistic perspective, obviously. So not just food and exercise, but every element. Mindfulness exercise, gratitude might work fantastic for one person, but then for another person, it doesn't actually have an impact on their health. And then it's like, sociability. Some of us are really, really social at certain times of day, and others just want to withdraw. Some of us are thriving in this COVID-19 situation, whereas I'm over here like starved of oxygen because I can't hug anyone.
Help me.
I'm dying for some physical contact beyond my own family. But then, some of us are just thriving and loving it. So every element of us that shows up as unique is an expression of our epigenetics, and all of them can have an influence on our health from a holistic perspective.
Wow. So it sounds like that if you can understand all of those elements and how you best show up, you've then got a roadmap to live your best, healthiest life.
Essentially, yeah.
Have I simplified that too much?
Yeah, so we do still have extenuating circumstances, right? There is still reality. We still have to go to work. We have to earn an income. All those sorts of things still have to happen. But we can understand, best how we can align ourselves to ourselves. But it's not also moving forward. It's also understanding the history of us. So the way our body has shaped itself tells the story of our experiences so far. So all the different features, this is reversed. All the different features of our face tell a story of the journey we've had up until this point. Even our skeleton, like if we look at an X-ray, we sort of think everybody's skeleton looks the same, but it's actually completely unique and different. And that tells a story of our emotional journey, as well as, the food and exercise and, the industry health standards that we see. And yes, so we can unpack amazing emotional baggage and look at it and find it and reveal it for what it is and deal with it. But then we can also look at exactly what type of food is perfect for you, or what time of day should be the best exercise. So it's not just your standardized health sort of things that we're looking at, it's everything.
Kind of felt like I needed to sit up straighter then while you were talking about that. I'm straight. She's looking at how I'm sitting. How am I showing up? So, how did you come across this? Because it's obvious, it's not mainstream, and I'd never heard of it until I'd met you.
Well, even with what we've talked about, and there's so much more to it than just that. But I came across it. It's just showed up in different areas throughout my studies. I've studied continuously for the last 8 years, and it just sort of touches in everywhere, and it captured my interest. And the first thing that really captured my interest was understanding that a lot of our emotional decisions that we make, a lot of our instinctual decisions we make, can actually be tracked back 7 generations through our lineage. And that has to do with epigenetics. So when I first learned that, I started going, what's this about? So eating patterns and things is where I was looking at the time, and how that was influencing things. But obviously it grew a lot more than that. And I started, just my curiosity. I just followed the path, and every time a new door opened, I ran down it, and I started looking more from the emotional side of things and how that changes and shapes our bodies. And I did this course called Emotional Anatomy, and oh gosh, if you've ever wanted to challenge yourself on a personal level, go and do an Emotional Anatomy course for 6 months. You got to stand in a room, bra and undies, with a room full of strangers, and you all read each other's bodies. It is full on. Yes.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable right now. I'm going to go and hide.
Yeah, it is full on. But however, you will come out of it just totally loving everything about yourself. And it's understanding, why we make the decisions that we do. So I've studied NLP and timeline therapy and that sort of stuff. But when it comes down to emotional anatomy, and if I can actually read in your body what your body is physically trying to do for you and how that affects your emotions, and you can understand that, then you can use your NLP skills to overcome those things. Like, I don't know if you can see my collarbone. No, you can't really see, but my collarbone actually angles upwards whereas most people's collarbones angles straight across. Yeah, like if you look at particularly movie stars, their collarbone angles like this. Mine goes like this. And the reason for that, I use the collarbone as an example. It's hard, isn't it? It's all reversed. Because it's easy to see, is that I through my teenage years, when my body was going through puberty and it was going through that growth stage, I actually was bullied so severely at high school it was no longer safe for me to go. I didn't get to finish school because of the situation that was happening at the time. And my body has actually shaped my collarbones to be like spears coming out the back of my shoulder, because I'm always, and even I still now, constantly live in fear of attack. That, you know, something will jump out from behind, that, you know, that old tribal sort of real earthy instinctual sort of thing. So my body actually has grown these collarbones up like this to ward against attack. So our bodies do these amazing things. And every element of us shows a story. The coloration of our skin, whether, you know, where we've got dimpling in skin, whether our belly, if it's hard or soft, that has different meaning. And so if we're looking from an emotional perspective, we can unpack you so beautifully and then learn to love the story of who you are, instead of going, oh, you know, I don't like this bit of myself. We find the story as to why it is, and it's served an amazing purpose, and then you can use that going forward to, as you say, create your best life. So that's really cool.
Who's the worst at being critical of themselves? Is it men or women, or is it like women in a certain age bracket, or is it just a human condition?
I think it is a human condition. I think we are seeing more men now who are getting critical of themselves. It never used to be a very masculine thing, because we don't have magazines that tell men that they're not perfect as they are. Whereas we have lots of magazines and social media and stuff that tell women that if you don't look like this, you don't fit the perfect profile. So women do struggle with it, but we are starting to see a lot more men struggling with the same thing. Like we're getting teenage boys with, they're going to the gym and doing far more stuff than they're supposed to be. But I think it's just getting more and more common. But yes, it is primarily in women up until about the age, I think around sort of, 35 or so. And then we kind of go, oh, why am I bothering? I've lived this long, and we start to shed some of our insecurities then. But up until then, we struggle a fair bit, I think.
Yeah, it's quite crazy, isn't it? Because we're born into these bodies, and yet we spend most of our life hating them.
Yeah, and that's exactly why my business is called Love Yourself Healthy, because I did that. I used to swing on this pendulum of, gain and lose 30 kilos at a time. And I always did it through hating myself. I'd feed myself fat because I hated myself and I wanted to hide behind the fat that I had. And then I'd starve myself skinny again because I wanted to shed this, fat, because I thought that it was so ugly. And everything I ever did came from this. I hated who I was. And then one day I just kind of went, well, hang on a minute. What if I flip this around and learn to love who I am? And then my body just sort of settled into this area in between. Like I still gain and lose a little bit of weight, like nothing's perfect, but my body found itself for who it's meant to be then, after I stopped trying to hate it into some sort of different form and loving myself healthy instead. Yeah,
it's crazy, isn't it? How does epigenetics fit in with modern medicine?
Oh, it's changing the face of modern medicine.
I love how excited you just got in.
So this is one thing we've talked about before, Annette, but obviously the people viewing haven't necessarily talked about it. So we all understand that there's circadian rhythm, right? That the sun rises at a certain time of day and sets at a certain time of day. And we sort of know that the human race generally have to go to sleep and wake up with the sun, and it's called the circadian rhythm. But within that one rhythm, we can vary between 5 hours between when one person needs to be going to bed and when another person does. Like some people actually come alive and get really creative at sort of 10 o'clock at night. If you send them to bed then, they're going to miss out on their most creative time of day. And the same in the morning. Some people can be waking up at 5 o'clock and out of bed and off to their, hit sessions and everything and smash out the day. And others, we don't even tell them to set their alarms or anything till 8, don't see a client until 10, take it steady in the morning. So with that one thing, that one clock, we know that there is a huge variance for individuals. But every single function of our body has its own individual clock, like how our hormones regulate themselves. We've got people who are sort of like a Vata Kapha blend, if you're looking at Ayurvedic, or the endo blend, they're the ones who need to sleep in a bit later because their hormones don't start to regulate themselves until about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So if they wake up before then, it's like they're bunny hopping their way through the day because their hormones don't ever actually get to. And so they're they're just sluggish and they don't ever feel like they can get on top. If they had just slept till 7, their body would have done a full hormonal cycle and they would have felt fantastic. And then there's sociability. There's when we should eat. There's when we should exercise. Every function of every clock is completely unique, and we all have our own unique clocks depending on our epigenetics, and even our genetics don't necessarily define those.
Wow. So how does that fit in with stuff like modern workplaces and education where, you know, the kids have got to be at school at 8:30, 9 o'clock and they finish at 3 and, you know, they're expected to sit there and concentrate and learn? Is there room for us to be that individualistic when it comes to finding a way to nurture ourselves through all of this?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one thing that I am hoping is really going to come out of coronavirus, because we're seeing all these businesses that used to say, no, you have to come into the office and you have to be in the office from 9 and 5 and that's it. Everybody has to fit that platform. And same with schools. We all have to go and sit in this one classroom and be there from 8:30 to 3:30 or whatever it is for your school. And that's the rules. And we're seeing that, no, we don't actually have to do that. We can do it a very different way. And for all of my clients, I'm really encouraging them to throw the old rules out the window at the moment. You've got a blank canvas right now. We can make this whatever we want it to be. Obviously, for the ladies that I work with, I can really help them define how their day could potentially look if they wanted it to. But for everybody else, it's just start listening to your body. Your body will tell you what it needs. And I would love to, on the other side of coronavirus, businesses start to embrace more flexibility around this, because if we have people who can arrive at work at 5 o'clock in the morning and get heaps done and then leave at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they can go to the beach and have a surf and enjoy the lifestyle that work is providing them, then they're going to have much more fulfilled employees. Or if they've got people who, are creative later in the day and would rather get up and go for a bushwalk in the morning before coming to work, again, you're going to have more creative and happier, healthier employees, and the businesses benefit so much. The only place where it doesn't really work is shift work. So unfortunately, our frontline workers who are keeping us going at the moment, they'll continue to struggle. I find they have it harder than anybody else.
Is there a way that if you are in a position like that where you're kind of beholden to the career, like if you're a doctor or a nurse or a paramedic or someone in those essential services, that you can mitigate some of that to not suffer too much?
We can, to an extent, absolutely. So when it comes to meals and things, like we can have meals set that are ideal for your body type at certain times of day, and even knowing when you can, maybe if you can't sleep, then get a bit of rest in. It's very, very dependent on the workplace and what the flexibility is. But I've got clients who are nurses, vet nurses as well, who work through shifts. And even though we can't necessarily manage their sleep the way we'd like to, the other elements of health we certainly can. And even for certain people, like people if they're a little bit more of a Vata energy, then getting them out around trees a couple of times a day is a beautiful thing for them to do that will refill their energy really easily, stuff like that. So we can do it. Absolutely. We can tweak things all we like, but wouldn't it be great if we could create the perfect world for everyone as individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you actually work out someone's epigenetics? What's the process that you go through without giving too much away? Because I know that we've talked many times about me talking to you, and now that I'm talking to you again, I'm like going, yes, we'll make an appointment after this.
So when it comes to that side of things, the personalized health and where it could affect in the medical field, it's really crazy, but I measure your skeleton, which sounds ridiculous, but it's not about getting the fat measurements or anything like that of your body. I do measurements like around your skull, your jawline. This is so weird because it's reversed, like the ratio of your hands, like your finger to your palm length, your foot, things like that. Yeah, so all those measurements are really important, and then lots of background questions. And then what we do is we essentially reverse engineer what your skeletal frame is telling us who you are now, because by that we can actually see how the energy transferred between the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm, which are the 3 different cells that create an embryo. So when your mummy and daddy had that magic moment and the embryo was being formed, the energy that transferred between those cells is where the epigenetics begins for you. And I can measure your skeleton now and tell you how that energy occurred when you were conceived.
Oh, so like if we get a little bit deeper here, so if you were created from a place of violence or trauma, then that will impact how you show up, even without you having any conscious or subconscious understanding of what happened between your parents.
Absolutely. That comes more in the emotional side of it than the personalized health side, but yes.
I'm going to say, holy fuck. That is like incredible. That sounds like it should be a real game changer for how we measure and grow our health and well-being. We've got so many people going, I'm in, sign me up. So
oh, really? I can't see anything.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm meant to be showing you that, and I'm so fascinated by what you're saying. That doesn't tell you who that person is. But I think at the end of this, we'll pop Hayley's whatever it is that you've got link so that you can have a conversation with Hayley offline if you'd like to have a chat to her about this, because it's absolutely fascinating that we can take it back to that moment. I'm gobsmacked. I know you've explained this to me before, but I think today maybe I was ready to hear it.
Yeah, but it's that moment and beyond as well. Because the energy of the two different cells, as they come together, they bring their own epigenetics as well, which has an influence. It's amazing. And yeah, we can track back through generations, and there's limiting beliefs that we carry that we might not have actually adapted in our lifetime, but may have happened in a previous generation. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to unpack. So when I'm looking at it from that emotional side of it, which is more where you were coming from then, I say it's like, when you've tried on you brought this dress and you loved it, and then the event finally came around when you could put it on, and you put it on, you couldn't get the zipper up, and you were just like, and you tossed it in the bottom of the pantry, threw a couple of bags on top of it, and you left it there, and it's crumpled up in the bottom of the wardrobe. When I look at it from the emotional side of it, it's like digging into the bottom of the wardrobe and finding that dress again. And often we can start to do this when we do mindfulness work or emotional work, or you go to NLP or self-help or things like that. And we sort of can, there's this crumpled up dress down there in the bottom of the wardrobe. We might look at it. But with emotional anatomy, we can actually reach in and pull that dress out. And then I sort of say, you could take it that far. So you've got it then in your hands. Or we could start to sort of unravel it and start to see the shape again. But even as we unravel it, it's all crinkled because it's been in the bottom of the wardrobe for so long. So what we're able to do by unpacking the emotions is start to bring that dress back to what it was and iron out some of the creases. And, some creases might be there permanently. We may never be able to fix them. My collarbones will never go back to being straight. But I can see what this beautiful dress was meant to be, and I can put it on and wear it forward out into the world for the glory that it was supposed to be, with pride in who I am, regardless of some of the crinkles that might still be there, because the dress in itself is a representation of the story so far. So that's the emotional side of it, how I see it.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Does epigenetics go hand in hand with like nutrition and exercise and all of that? Sorry, Hayley's just said, here you go. Hayley Birtles Eads. Would love to hear more about this. Could Hayley write for our magazine and our website?
Yeah, of course.
Fairly sure that we can twist her arm to do that. So, yeah, back to my question. So this goes hand in hand with nutrition and dietitians, and so you can work in collaboration with other health professionals?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like we see a big push at the moment, everyone should be more alkaline with their diets. And that's great for some people. But if we had, say, a very strong pitta energy who is eating much too alkaline food, they're actually going to get a lot of calcium build up in their body and things like that. So where this comes into play is really finding the individual and what nutritional needs there are. So some people need lots of veggies. Some people almost need to go to a pescatarian diet, and that's perfect for them. And then for others, they need to have the high protein diet, the timing of day and things like that. So yes, we do in the health industry have guidelines for what healthy eating is. And I kind of touched on this in a post in the group last week that, you know, we have these measurements of what's healthy, but some of us are meant to carry more weight and be heavier. And then some of us are actually supposed to be really skinny, and we're not supposed to fit into those mainstream measurements. And yeah, when it comes to your nutrition and your exercise, we can nut right down to a list of these foods are excellent for you, these foods are good for you, these foods are okay for you, these ones are not so great, and these are the ones you should avoid. And we actually have an app as well, which makes it very handy.
Oh, yeah. So is this why there's people who, you know, have this relationship with yo-yo dieting because they've tried Atkins, they've tried keto, they've tried isogenics, they've tried, I don't know, whatever else is out there that people have, you know, the air, hold your breath and jump on 1 foot diet. It's hard to keep up, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh, okay, shit, this week I should be doing keto, or next week I should be doing this, or I should be reducing my carbs. What you're saying is that by understanding your epigenetics is that you can get and eat the right foods for you. And you can, like, there's some people who go, like, I don't even know what size or shape I'm meant to be.
No. And a lot of us don't. And a lot of us have conditioned our bodies into being something that it's not meant to be, in both positive and negative ways. But, yeah, essentially that's what we're doing. And, like, if we look at kapha energy, a kapha energy of a person or the endo in the Western medicine side is supposed to be really grounded. And when we see these people trying to get down to these ridiculously skinny numbers and, yeah, they're doing maybe a keto diet or something, which is so wrong. Stressful. And they're like reducing their body weight down really, really low. What actually happens for what we call these people, their guardians, is they have neurotransmitters in their knees that will actually tell their body that they need to store more mass because they've gotten too heavy. So for some, too light. So for some people, their knees will actually fight everything they're doing and make them store as much mass as they can when they get too light. And so that's where we see these yo-yos happening and depression, oh my gosh, when you see people who are not supposed to be, you know, twiggy, skinny, trying to force themselves to be, of course they're going to get into all these mental health issues because their knees are telling them every day, no, we need to store more mass. You're defeating your own purpose in life because they are supposed to carry more mass in order to be able to serve us. They've got extra progesterone in order to be able to love us more. So it's a heartbreaking thing for me to see when there's people who are so committed to these diets because it works so well for somebody else, right? You know, my neighbor did this and it worked really well, or my sister did this, or my mum did this and it worked so well. And it is killing themselves as an individual, and they're fighting with themselves every single day to maintain this diet. And if that's what's happening, then I can almost guarantee you it is not the right thing for you because your body is telling you in every way, this is not right. And it breaks my heart when I see people trying so hard and so committed and putting so much devotion to something that isn't going to take them to who they're truly supposed to be because they're trying to fit into something that fits someone else.
Wouldn't you love to get your hands on Oprah?
Oh, yes.
So that's the first person I thought of he's this magnificent, powerful, successful woman, and we've watched her over the past 30, 40 years go from really skinny to fat to midway to in between, and it's like even though she's, you know, so powerful, there's something there that is putting her on that journey. I guess what's really important, a really important point to make here, is that what you're talking about is not a magic bullet. Is that there's work involved, isn't there?
Yeah, you've got to apply some effort.
It's like you can't just go and see Hayley and just like, boom, you're the perfect person that you need to be.
No, but what we can do, obviously, is try to make it the easiest journey possible. So what I've really found since doing this work is that when I'm with a client and we're starting to discuss what best fits them time-wise, food, exercise, sociability, career, emotions, all of it, hormones, is during those conversations, you just watch their subconscious agree. our subconscious often has to fight against what we're doing, but it's this really beautiful process that people come to me and they're fighting against this forcefulness within them, that they have to try and achieve something that's not right for them. Sorry, I've got to check the school emails. And then you just see the subconscious take on this shift, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, yes, I agree with that. Yes, that sounds right. Oh, yes, that works for me. And you see this shift. And so it's no longer this, I've got to. It's like, oh, I get to do this. That's what makes me feel good. And it's a really beautiful thing to see. It's hard to describe, but it goes from being forcefulness to being in flow with yourself.
Oh, beautiful. Hayley, thank you so much. I just so love your energy and your enthusiasm and your passion for making people's lives better, and the work that you've put into educating yourself and then being so willing to share. You truly are a superhero in my book. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Annette. That's beautiful.